Jose Ucar is an international communication and influence expert. He helps business leaders to build strong and successful international relationships with customers, work colleagues, and teams by understanding what it takes to communicate internationally with impact and confidence. The title of his talk is How to Become a Leader with Global Influence. Jose, without further ado, the floor is yours, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. Again, Fernando, Bernardo, all of you. How are you, everybody? Welcome to this very special session that I put together all the way from the UK. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing myself, but very important though. This topic is called How to Be a Leader with Global Influence. So I'm not going to be speaking about how to become an influencer, a TikTok or Facebook. Well, Facebook is a bit old now. Or Instagram. No, nothing to do with this. Let me start by sharing my definition of global influence, which is connected with the book Global Influence that I've written last year. Global influence for leaders and for people in business and even for you in your own community. It's all about creating what I like to call behavioral shifts in people. Okay, it's all about that positive impact. And I tend to work, just to give you more context, when it comes to global influence, around three key areas. One, to achieve global influence, as a person, as a leader, it is important to be authentic. So authenticity is a big piece that we will cover somehow today. The second element is the intention and desire to build strong human connections, okay? Strong human connections with the people you lead, regardless of their accents, regardless of where you're from, regardless of the cultural differences that sometimes we find within this interconnected world. And the third one is having this holistic approach to communication, which incorporates or encompasses the ability to be good at conveying information, very effective in terms of how you convey your information, coaching your people, and also the ability to challenge behaviors, delve into difficult conversations. So those are the key elements of global influence, okay? So remember, for me, global influence is all about creating positive behavioral, I cannot speak tonight, behavioral shifts in people. So what do I want to talk about today? Three things that are key, because I only have 25 minutes, right? One is going to be how to simplify our communication internationally. Second, I'm going to be speaking about the power, the much needed power, and I'll expand on this, that we need as leaders within this global context. And finally, I'm going to be sharing briefly the strategy that I learned from my granddad many years ago, which I refined, and I use it to connect with anyone in the world if they want to be using successfully for many years. So that is the structure of my talk. And in order to start, even before I go into defining and speaking about how to simplify communication, I'm going to tell you a story, a quick story that exemplifies global influence at its best. And I'm going to take you back to 2017, no, even before that, 2007. So we're looking at a few years back, and I'm in Spain organizing, supporting an event, an international event, of course, and we are going to be traveling in the evening from the city of from San Sebastian to Bilbao. And I sit on the bus, okay, as we're going to be traveling there for dinner, and right next to me sits a gentleman called Alan Pierce. He's now a good friend of mine. But at that moment, linking it to global influence, he's the guy that in a way changed my life. And this is the whole beauty of the global influence angle to this talk. Why am I saying he changed my life? Well, in less than an hour from San Sebastian to Bilbao, okay? Less than an hour again, he managed, listen carefully, to get to know me, to find about my aspirations, my goals, my desires, even my frustrations, all of that together. At the end of that conversation, of that journey, he even managed to persuade me, convince me to come here to the UK and work for him. How many years has it been now? a few since 2007. I don't work with Alan anymore. As I said, he's a good friend of mine, but he managed in less than an hour, as I said, to get me to come to this country, work for him. And that whole journey and adventure completely changed my life. So what I'm doing right now, in a way, is linked to the influence Alan had on me back then. Okay, so this is where I'm coming from when I speak about global influence. And hey, I'm Venezuelan. I'm living in Spain. My English, as you can tell, it's got an accent. Back then, my English wasn't as good. And Alan had a Cockney accent. It was difficult for me to understand still. His curiosity, his approach, how he went about it, got me to feel a level of trust. He managed to develop a connection that enabled me to, as I said before, to come to the UK. So now let's begin to explore some of these things that Alan did as I begin to speak about how to simplify your communication, your international communication more specifically. And I love, okay, if you watched some of my talks in the past, I love to break things down, okay? And I love to make my talks very easy for you to take away different things and apply. And I love acronyms. So the first acronym that I'm going to be presenting to you is the Simpler acronym, or as I like to call it, the Simpler method. And why is it important to simplify our communication across boundaries and across countries internationally? Well, depending on the source you check, there are more than 3,000 cultures. There are more than 7,000 languages. So how on earth are we going to be able to learn all of this? So my strategy is to help you build those connections just like Alan did. Because as I like to say, it may take you many years to learn a language, to understand a culture, or to understand different cultures, but it can take you less than an hour to build a deep human connection. So let's look at the Simpler acronym framework. And I know the audience in there, if you want to type in the chat, if you have any questions, this is the moment. And maybe towards the end, we can also have a quick conversation on that. Simpler, the first one, starts with the S, which is slowing down. Okay. One of the best things I recommend for people communicating internationally and communicating on the day-to-day is to slow down. We don't do this enough. Slow down in order to begin to appreciate the person you have in front of you, to begin to organize your thoughts. So that's the first one in communication. Slow down. And as you slow down your thinking, you will slow down your speaking. That is the first one of the Simpler method. The next one, the intention. Global influence is all about the impact. So the intention, when you go and engage with another human being, I want you to be intentional about the positive impact you want to create. And also understand that you are in charge of your communication at all times. Then the M, a multicultural lens. We don't tend to be born with that multicultural lens, but then as we begin to operate in this interconnected world, be ready to come across people from different cultures, people with different accents. So be open to it. Be curious, okay? Don't be shocked when you hear something. Try and understand it. That is the multicultural lens, very important and relevant in today's international communication. Then I link it to preconceptions. We all have preconceptions about people, about accents. And remember that we are born and we have experiences, and then we study, we learn, and all of this lead us to create preconceptions about people. All of these lead us to create preconceptions when we hear an accent, when we see someone doing something in a certain way. Okay? So be mindful of the preconceptions you carry. And whenever you go and interact with a human being, put them aside, because we all have them. So whenever you spot yourself, oh, there is something in here that is impacting how I could be communicating to this person, then put it aside. Be mindful of it. This is a big self-awareness piece. That is the P for preconceptions. Then the L, the language, okay? And most of our communication in business nowadays, internationally, is in English. So my invitation, connecting it to slowing down. Take your time when you communicate. Pay attention to the level of English of the other person you're speaking to. I still remember when I came to the UK in 2007 and I joined the business, my first meeting, I left that meeting without having understood a thing. And no one within that meeting that day was actually able to spot the fact that I didn't understand. Nowadays, I could say, hey, what's my responsibility? But back then, that language gap was still there. So be mindful of the language. Then the E, energetic engagement, okay? Energy is so important when we go and connect with another human being. What Alan did on the bus that day was great energy, a level of enthusiasm that really enabled us to create that connection. Okay, that's the E. Bring that excitement into your interactions, bring energy into it. Okay, imagine that we're going to be meeting and then I don't sense a level of energy or anything, or not even a bit of interest. So I would say, well, I mean, it would break rapport, it would break that connection. And then finally, the R of that simpler method is for reflection. Okay, every time you interact with a human being, take your time to reflect, rethink, how did that go, what could I have done differently? And then that will get you into the process, or a journey if you want to call it, of always improving your communication and your interactions with another human being. So then you have the simpler model. It will enable you to simplify your communication, okay? And it will make it easier for you to connect, to be ready, to pay attention to the preconceptions, to have a multicultural lens, to slow down your thinking, to watch the English that you use, the level of proficiency, and always rethink, okay? So there you have the simpler method as the first part of the talk. Now, another element that I wanted to cover today for you to take away is what I call the power, okay? The power of international leadership. And here I'm not saying you've got the power and this is why you go and tell people off, or that you operate from that power in terms of shouting or being passive aggressive, which happens, I know, in certain countries. Nothing like that, okay? The power is yet another acronym that I'm going to be breaking down for you, so you make it as actionable as possible. In some of the sessions I deliver, I always have people asking me, so, Jose, what are the traits of a leader? What should we, apart from, of course, the communication piece, I mean, what are those things that we should be doing? And I always like to start my sessions around leadership speaking about the mission and the vision, not just the mission and the vision of the business, which is also important, but also their mission and their vision within the business, and their mission and their vision for their teams. Because the first letter of the power acronym or structure is the P, for the Pathfinder. As leaders, or it can be as people of influence within our community, in our families, even in our circle of friends, we can become this pathfinder that guides people, that gets them to places. At the same time, when we're doing this, we position ourselves as that person of authority, but it's not coming from that position of power. It's actually coming from a position of knowing direction. So that's why being the pathfinder is so important, and that's the P of that power acronym. Then the next one is the O, for being open. Openness is so important. Openness is linked to that vulnerability piece, okay? To being you. When I speak about authenticity, openness is a key element in that, okay? Being able to have that level of connection with the people you lead. Openness is key. Don't keep anything to yourself. Of course, I mean, within reason. But whenever there is something in there that you want to communicate with them, be open. Be approachable is another way of speaking about this. So that's the O. The W, willingness. As a leader and as a human being in society, always be willing to help. Be willing to get involved. Be willing to support your people, so that they know that no matter when, no matter how, no matter where, they can reach out to you and you will be there because you're willing to help. And as you're willing to help, you carry that level of energy within you as well, which helps connecting with people. Then elevating. That will be the E of the power acronym. Elevate. Remember, the simpler, having that intention, well, As Dale Carnegie used to say, and I love this quote, you can either build people up in every interaction or tear people down. So the decision is yours. So I always like to think about building people up. So every time you engage with another human being, leave them a bit better off, at least. Always elevate people. Okay. And then finally, the R of the POWER acronym is rapport. Rapport building skills are one of the most important skills you can develop. And I like to see rapport as that dance of mutual responsiveness. Yeah. And well, I'm not going to dance salsa right now, but it's just that dance, as I said, I'm going to repeat it because I love this analogy so much. That dance of mutual responsiveness. You engage with a person today, and when you engage with them tomorrow, they may be in a different situation, okay? Emotionally, physically, mentally. And when you engage with them the next day, it can be different as well. And when you engage with them in a year's time, things change. We change as human beings. So that ability to think on your feet and always being able to connect with your people, and as I said, build that responsiveness will be key as you become a leader with global influence. And again, I'm not making it today only about leadership. I'm making it about you as a person that can lead anyone. I can leave anyone better off through being a pathfinder, showing them the way by being open and vulnerable, authentic, by what was the one POW, by that willingness to support, elevating people, and finally building rapport. And one of the ways in which I always invite people to build rapport is initially match people's behaviors within reason. And once you create that connection, you can begin to lead. So I've covered the simpler method, I've covered the power, and now how about I delve into my granddad's strategy to wrap this up with? I feel like I need a bit of water, but I'm going to hold myself. How are you doing, people in there? Tap in the chat. Let's engage a bit more. It is a pleasure to be here for me today, even though it's a bit late, but still. I'm loving the fact that I can connect with lots of people over in America and in Latin America as well. Let me tell you about my granddad. My granddad, he's not around anymore. Still, I carry him in my heart, and he's, part of my book and part of my day-to-day, because many of my behaviors have been influenced by him. So my dad, just like Alan, of course differently, had a very special version of power, had a very special way of communicating. So with time, when people have been asking me, hello, Maris, yep, there we go, you got that one right, loving it. Thank you so much for contributing. When people ask me, one of the reasons why I decided, by the way, to write this book, Global Influence, was because Maria Franzoni, a formidable coach that helps speakers within the speaking industry, she said to me, Jose, how do you connect with people? How do you do it? What happens? What's your thinking? And that in a way got me, towards breaking down my strategies and how I do things when it comes to connecting with others. So my granddad was incredible. He would go to the supermarket, bless him, and he would chat to anyone. He would go anywhere and he would speak to anyone, and people would love him. People would remember him. So he was memorable. He had lots of traits. One thing that wasn't great about my granddad, is that whenever he didn't want to communicate with someone, then he would just write them off. Okay, which is not what I'm looking for right now. We all have, the good and the bad. But what my granddad did really well, I've got my dad in my mind right now. Dad, if you're watching, drop me a message in that. One thing, he did 4 things really well. He was always very excited to meet people. He was a person that was very humble. He was always praising others. And he had humor. And I've been incorporating that in my day-to-day, in my talks. And I've also streamlined it, okay? And incorporated some of my learnings and my experiences. So the way I see this, the first one, or the first step of the strategy, is what I call adjustable enthusiasm or adjustable excitement. Why adjustable? Remember what I said about building rapport and that connection? Yeah. That mutual responsiveness. Imagine that you had people eager to meet you, excited to be meeting you. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? But at the same time, think about these people coming to you to meet you, overly excited, way too much energy. This is why adjusting that energy level, that excitement is important. Or if you had a very low excitement, then potentially you need to bring it up a bit. So adjustable excitement or adjustable enthusiasm is the first one. One thing my granddad did really well, and I found it works. And it works extremely well across cultures. You go and regulate that energy, that enthusiasm, and there is a connection that happens between human beings. Give it a try next time you go and meet someone that you never met before. Could be a networking event. You can bring this to your day to day, of course, with the people you know. Be excited to see them after the weekend. What was the second one? I wanted to talk to you about channel admiration, I call this. And it is very important for the people we lead. Think about this, that we praise them. This is what I call motivational feedback. I'm not going to speak about developmental feedback today, but then praising people. And why channel? Because instead of saying, wow, you're really good, you're coming from a place of observation. And then when you see them, you go, wow, I really appreciate this thing about you. Or in my case, I love communication. So every time someone presents an idea in a certain way, or they gesture in a certain way, or they put their point across, I give them some praise, which is channel admiration towards something specifically. Think about this with your partners, with your friends as well. It's great because it is coming from a place of observation and admiration. Okay, so that'd be the second thing. And my granddad was wonderful at that. He probably overdid it, I would say. Then the third one, purposeful humor. What do I mean by humor? Yes, some of us like to tell jokes. It's not just about telling jokes, okay? It isn't either about deflecting things or difficult conversations through humor. It's not to be used as a deflection mechanism. My point when it comes to humor is linked to being amused by things more often. We live in a society, we go to work, and there is always a level of stress. There is always pressure. We need to achieve things, and we get into arguments with people. And what happens is that we tend to take things way too personally. We tend to be way too hard on ourselves. So this humorous approach to life is actually that, being amused by the things that happen. I'll give you a quick one today, a quick example. I've been doing a migration of I've been migrating from Google to Outlook. 6 years worth of emails and content and things like this. And I realized that this morning the migration went wrong, and I ended up from thousands and 6 years worth of emails to a couple of days worth of emails. Well, I mean, the fact that I'm laughing at the moment is a good example of what I mean. Of course, I'm worried and I need to get it sorted. But then what is the difference between being extremely upset and frustrated to be more amused about it? In the end, I'm still going to work on it and I'm still going to find a way to solve it. But then I feel differently. When I communicate with people, the technicians that are helping me, I'm coming from a completely different space. Okay. And I also find up here that I can be more resourceful, I would say. And then the final one, to finish up with my granddad's strategy. Love the idea of being amused as things happen. Thank you, Maria. It is important, and it is something that I've been learning with time. Don't get me wrong, I still get upset and frustrated, but I go back to, reminding myself of it. And the final one is determined humility. It's not just about being humble. It's being determined to be humble. Again, in this society, ego is a big thing. We go competing with each other. We feel we're better or worse than other people. When it comes to this determined humility, it's about letting go of that ego, letting go of the competition, being you, because as I like to say, everyone else is taken. Be respectful to people regardless of who they are or where they are in the world, the profession they have, the accent they have. Let go of ego. Be humble and be respectful. So think backwards about this now. If I go and start with my granddad strategy, the first one, you have the excitement, but you regulate it. You adjust that enthusiasm when you connect with people. Then you channel praise towards them. At the same time, you're in a humorous state that generates a different level of connection, and you remain humble. Combine this with a power acronym. Remember that one. And on top of it, combine it with a simpler acronym or framework. Listen carefully. All of them together, and you will be well on your way to becoming a leader with global influence, to becoming a person with global influence, to becoming a human being that works towards creating a ripple effect of positive change.